Back to Untold Physio Stories podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. E, with Modern Manual Therapy, Edge Mobility System, and Modern Rehab Mastery. And my co-host is,
Dr. Andrew Rothschild with Modern Patient Education.
how's it going today, Andrew?
It's going good. E, how you doing?
Great. Andrew just got off a crazy weekend where he substituted and taught a Modern Manual Therapy course for me. It's the first course that I've never taught. Andrew didn't realize that. I think he thought that other people have taught it before, but you're the first person to have ever taught my course.
Yeah, honored, I guess. Yeah,
It's come a long way toward actually from just like being the first guy who's ever blogged other than me on my back when it was a blog and people read those things.
that's right.
Who, who would have thought?
Who would have thought? They never told me it would happen. Told me it would never
Right.
happen.
And apparently, I mean, I don't know if my brand is ruined yet. It takes a couple weeks for those things to happen and reviews to start pouring in. So we'll see.
Yeah, it could go either way.
It could, yeah. Maybe I won't have to do this at all anymore, and it could just be you.
You know what? I can kind of branch out, maybe just kind of take it for my own.
Yeah, sure. And I'll just take royalties.
I don't have the marketing acumen though. I definitely don't have that.
No, there is that. Hey, I'd be happy to just sit back and you know share things.
No, but it was
That
great. It was a great group. I really enjoyed it. It was a great experience.
good. Well, we have a very special episode of Untold Physio Stories today. Like, if you're a child of the '80s, you would know what that means. Our two guests. It's actually even crazy because we have two guests. I don't even know if we've ever had two guests before. Um, are the authors, or not really? I shouldn't say the authors. They Are you the authors of this book?
I think we're publishers. As
Publishers.
publishers? I don't know, Tim. What do
Well,
you think?
you're the publisher because, like, did you send it to a publisher to be published?
Well, we self-published.
Self-published. All right.
Yeah.
It's the publishers of Movers and Mentors. You guys, the audience that may have heard Andrew and I talk about this amazing book. So, why don't you guys just give a quick intro of who you are? Tim, you can go first.
Yeah, Urs and Andrew, thanks for having us on. My name is Tim Reynolds. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I'm currently the professor for anatomy and physiology at Ithaca College. I'm still treating patients part-time, twice a week. Went and did a postdoc residency in orthopedics. I graduated from Ithaca College back in 2014 with Bryan, and then went and did a spine fellowship after that. And so dabble a little bit with chronic pain, a little bit with patients with spine pathologies, and lucky to have this opportunity to talk to both of you guys today, but also to include you in the book. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, Bryan Guzski here. As Tim just said, and I'm sure we'll get to this. Urs and Andrew, thank you both for being a part of the book. Meant a lot when you guys responded pretty quickly that you were interested. So thank you in advance.
Did we respond too quickly?
No, not too quickly, but quicker than maybe some others. So it was always exciting to get responses like that. But I'm a physical therapist in Rochester, New York. I practice in an outpatient orthopedic setting with the University of Rochester Medical Center. Up until this year, so for the last 4 years, I was the director of the orthopedic residency program there. I actually just stepped away from that, and I'm in the process of starting a mobile practice myself. But as Tim said, Tim and I went to Ithaca College together, graduated in 2014, did an orthopedic residency in 2015, and then came up with this crazy idea sometime during that year and worked on it for the last few years and was able to publish in 2021. So thanks for having us on the show, guys.
All right. And what's the book we're talking about again, in case people are just tuning in now?
Yeah, so the book is called Movers and Mentors. We went through a few names before we landed on that one, so I hope people like that. But it's Movers and Mentors, and basically it's a compilation of responses to questions that we think students, young professionals, and really anyone practicing in the field of movement science answers to questions that we think they would crave. So we asked a lot of questions to leaders in the profession that are really agnostic to the field or specialty, that they're practicing in. So we asked questions about failure, best investments, favorite books. Kind of ran the gamut in terms of professional and personal growth type questions. So that's the book that we're talking about today.
So how hard was it to to publish your own book?
Uh,
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that they don't really teach you that in PT school, right? I mean there's no self-publishing 101 and or collaboration with over 75 individuals, not only from like the United States but from around the world. And so after we sort of got a system going along, we learned a lot. When we do Movers and Mentors Volume 2, hopefully it's going to be a little bit more streamlined. But there's definitely some speed bumps along the way. Things in terms of just reaching out to our guests. Obviously, person you and Bryan and I had an opportunity to do a recording in terms of our questions and answers. And then we had to go through and transcribe that. Right. So that's hours of just sitting down and re-listening to words and sentences and then
Right.
certain
Yeah.
people like
Being
and
the beta for that, you're probably like, we're never doing this again.
we'll learn from our mistakes. We'll just say it like that. But and then Andrew, some guests kind of reached out and sent their own email responses, right? And so we had the opportunity to go through and edit some of those responses as well. So there's definitely a different style in terms of our interviews that we had. But then once we were able to navigate all that stuff, put it all together, and then send it off to Amazon for publishing, it actually was pretty streamlined. So the actual self-publishing part, once we had the whole project put together, was pretty convenient.
I think the timing of it too, I mean, whether it was intended or not, I think it probably was very serendipitous how it worked out was with obviously what we've been dealing with the last 2 years with the, COVID-19 pandemic. Um, Giving, all this comes out at a time when people may have, obviously people were not traveling for in-person continuing education, newer graduates, younger clinicians, all of a sudden, their normal day-to-day job has all of a sudden probably drastically changed, at least for those first few months. And then now this resource comes out that people have access to all of a sudden have truly access to a lot of people, really, really top of the field, that they can kind of just get a little bit of true, like little guidance and mentorship from. And I found that with social media. That's how Ursula and I connected. That's how I've connected with a lot of people. I think that's how we all connected. And then, but people who even were maybe not as into the social media part of things, this is one of those resources, and the timing of it just, I think, was great for so many people.
I have a couple questions. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, just to kind of go off of that, Andrew. This was a project that Tim and I were and are really excited about. And selfishly, it was a chance for us to stay motivated and stay engaged and talk to really accomplished, successful. Everyone's definition of success is different, but very successful in our minds. Clinicians and researchers and innovators and influencers. And part of that was that we wanted to kind of give that back to the profession. And that's why we created the book. We hope, young professionals and students get excited about reading this stuff as much as we did.
Yeah. So my question is, did you get any like really unexpected answer from, I don't mean to even call anyone out because you can be anonymous about it, or, I mean, since everyone's in the book, you really can't be anonymous about it. But did anyone give like a really unexpected, like off the wall kind of answer to any of the particular questions? Like any stories you can think of?
I mean, I think one of the things, so Selena Horner, who is a practicing clinician, she practices in a geriatric population. A lot of our guests provide a lot of positive answers and not necessarily the sunshine and rainbows, because I think everybody is pretty honest and true throughout the book. But she was at a point in time when her facility was undergoing a lot of stressors associated with COVID-19 and sort of the trials and tribulations associated with trying to be a practicing clinician. So she became honest and true and kind of told her how the frustrations that she was having with the profession, how she was kind of leaving the profession at the time that she was submitting her answers to the book. And so I think just the honesty that she was willing and the vulnerability that she was willing to put herself out and say, this is my story, this is what I'm actually going through. She had some really awesome, deep responses. And I think that is something that our profession, specific Andrew, like we were talking about, like the world got turned upside down in our profession. I was thinking about all those new graduates who are out there doing remote clinical experiences, right? Or trying to pretend, all right, this is how you do a telehealth evaluation. I can imagine just what sort of questions new graduates had about the profession. And is this right for me? Or the frustrations of a practitioner for 20, 30 years? Is this exactly what I want to be doing at this point in time in my life? So I think kind of surprising just because it was so honest and true based on the environment that we were in at the
Yeah, I think that one definitely stood out in my mind. And I think there were just plenty of, Tim mentioned vulnerability. I think a lot of our guests were vulnerable. A lot of our researchers that we interviewed, a lot of influencers or innovators were pretty honest about times when their content or their research was like chewed up by the public or chewed up by other researchers and kind of put down, and they had to overcome that and kind of find ways to navigate that and reframe things. And those stories are really interesting to read about. I brought this one up before in a few other conversations and podcasts that Tim and I have been on, but I had no idea that Stanley Paris has sailed around the world and swam the English Channel. I thought both of
Oh,
those.
you clearly did not. You clearly did not go to the University of St. Augustine.
I did not go to St.
I feel like
Augustine.
I
But,
feel like that's part of the curriculum.
well, he did that. He did that like 5 years ago or something. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah,
The guy is just
he keeps on doing it. Yes, yes, he keeps on
yeah.
doing
So
it.
I think that one definitely stood out in my mind as well.
Yeah, Bryan was talking about some of the research stuff, like, and he was mentioning earlier about being like selfish in our opportunity to go through this and talk to all these really cool clinicians. I had a chance to sit down with Peter O'Sullivan for an hour and a half and talk shop about PT stuff, which was super cool.
I'm
And
jealous, actually. The more you guys talk about it, I'm just jealous. When I started seeing who was in this book, I was like flabbergasted. You got David Butler
Mm-hmm.
and Peter O'Sullivan and Andrew.
Yeah.
Shirley Sarman tells a really kind of powerful and again vulnerable story about a family member that lost their life as she was going through school, and just like really stuff you don't read that in a textbook, right? You don't read that in her her movement impairment systems text. It's a lot of good stuff in here.
I know I wrote about, I don't want to call myself up, but I wrote about getting fired.
Yeah.
And I had wrote that actually on my blog before, Urshan had kind of reached out to me. And that was something my wife it was really, did not want me to write about. But I thought it was really important because it was like, I'm not going to be the only clinician who goes through something like this probably. And so if someone can learn from my experience and learn from my mistakes, then that will be, another big, besides my own personal and professional growth that came out of it, it's going to hopefully help somebody else as well. And so when those questions were on there, I was like, I have to put that out again because hopefully it'll have that even greater reach,
well, that's what was so great about it, because this is stuff that's not in textbooks. This is stuff that people don't highlight when they're saying, this is my top social media post of 2022, right? Look at me getting the likes on my Instagram page. People aren't talking about the failures or the interview that didn't go the way that they wanted to. And not everything's sunshine and rainbows. And I think that opportunity to normalize failure and just have the opportunity to say, it's okay that you're not going to be the top of your class. And that was so Ursula, you're talking about like, what were some cool responses? It took me 3 times to get into PT school. I failed my last clinical rotation, right? I failed the boards exam, right? Those are the kind of stuff that I really appreciate, because being in an academic role right now, as I'm getting ready to give my second lecture exam, and my students are freaking out and swearing and cursing my name because they don't want to sit for a test this week. But that's besides the point. But these are the conversations that I've literally opened up chapters to this book, handed it to them in my office, and said, read this. It's okay that you're not an expert right now, because you shouldn't be, because these are the individuals who paved the way to become leaders and movers in this profession. And they were in your same shoes 15, 25 years ago. It doesn't matter. So that's the kind of stories that we were hoping to sort of receive from this book.
I feel like
Well, you just reminded me of all the things I failed at. More than I listed.
failure feels like, I think, a really lonely place when you're going through it. And then, just like you said, Andrew, you put your example in there and spoke to that. And I think that's comforting to some extent for young therapists or students, just to see that, and to see, clinicians or, researchers or anyone in the profession doing, really cool stuff, and people that you look up to that have gone through that. I think it makes failure not feel like such a lonely place. And you talk about, Andrew, and how you navigated that is you needed to kind of step away and invest some time in yourself to become a better, in order to be a better physio, to be a better physical therapist, you needed to kind of first become a better person. You said you consumed a lot of, books and other, content to kind of help you do that. Ryan Holiday, I know you mentioned him. I like his stuff too. And I think that's also helpful to see like how you actually dealt with that and navigated that.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I appreciate that. And as kind of the podcast that Ursula and I do, a lot of it, it's interesting stories, but a lot of those stories are also our clinical failures too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we are one of the few podcasts that like to highlight some of those things just to, because usually it does make for a better story anyway.
It does make for, yes, I know. That's why, everyone loves the epic fails on YouTube. So our failures aren't quite so epic, but yeah, I mean, people do like to hear it, and also how you learn from it. I mean, hopefully you learn from the failures. And really the podcast, our podcast origin story, if you guys have never even heard it, someone back when I was just blogging and just talking about how awesome I was, which I did for like the first year, and how I had magic hands and how I was breaking up fascia. And I mean, if you look really early on, I never removed any of these posts, but I was like posting pictures of bruised IT bands and, just um, my one friend, he was coming to me before I realized he had compartment syndrome, or what turned into compartment syndrome. I used like the fine edge of the edge tool on him, and I dug into his like between his calf and his tibia so much that I left a groove there. Like it was there for like as if it was pitting edema, but for 5 minutes. And I just posted this, and he said he felt better and he was able to run. So in my mind, that justified the amount of force. Um, Man, where am I even going with this? But
The origin of the podcast.
oh, right.
I
But
want to
yeah,
hear
so
more about the groove. Can we talk a little bit more about that? I want to know how long that. No, I'm kidding.
I don't even know how long. I mean, he left and it was still there. I mean, I didn't exactly text him and say like, "Hey, how long has that groove been there?" I have had patients say like, a week later they take a picture of their hamstring. They used to take a picture of their hamstring,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Well, my hamstring feels better, but it's still bruised." And I had to go to a wedding, and I was wearing a short skirt, and everyone's like, "What happened to you?" But I didn't care because I could dance. So, but anyway, yeah. Someone had trolled me on Facebook and said like it would be more interesting if you posted about failures instead of your successes all the time. And I'm like, just blocking this idiot. I just blocked him, and then like I do with so many trolls, I didn't even bother responding. And a year later, I kind of thought, oh, maybe there's something to that. That guy was probably actually just being constructive, and I just thought he was trolling. I didn't even know who it was because I blocked him, and then I literally can never reach out to him again because I have a pretty long block list these days.
It was me.
But that was also it was a great idea.
Yeah, it's so funny how like ideas can stem from things like that. It's David Butler in the book talks about where he came up with the concept of explaining pain, and just the genesis of that is interesting. It was a patient that like basically saw him for a visit, like never came back. He saw the patient a while, months or whatever later. And the patient was like, "Oh no, you told me I could like go and garden and like my back wouldn't fall apart. So that's all I needed to hear." And he was like, "I think there's something to that. I'm going to explore more of this. Like, I just told you that you're okay and like pain is normal and you're going to get through this and you can go do all the stuff that you want to do." And like, that was just the genesis of the idea. And then from there, now we have, explain pain. It's kind of crazy.
Mulligan's story is also, his inception story is kind of cool, where he was came in with a person that had finger pain, and he's just poking around, moving the finger back and forth, trying just different directions, and then they're able to wiggle their finger back and forth, and it didn't hurt him. He's like, I think there's something about this. Talks about asking his wife for permission to dream about this like 18-year-old girl that night that he was trying to fix her finger, and sure enough, Mulligan mobilizations. There we go. But
that's great. Well, don't spoil the whole book.
Yeah, some snippets there.
Just some of the highlights.
Those are the lowlights. The rest of the book is like 100 times better. All right. So, anything is there anything you would definitely have done differently in this whole experience?
Not necessarily done different. I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to exploring is some opportunity to expand on some of the questions that we asked. I think one of the things, like Brian mentioned before, we ask about failures, we ask about good advice, bad advice, favorite books, good investments. So we tried to shoot relatively wide in terms of the net that we casted. I think that there's some conversations now within our profession regarding burnout. And I think that might be an interesting conversation to explore, and how do potentially individuals that are in a variety of different spheres, academia, professional, business, researchers, right? How do they handle, or what's their perception on burnout? Because I think it gets a lot of buzz in terms of um, just the generation that we're in, between that and imposter syndrome. And I think those two would be interesting to have a discussion about. And we've had some conversation about imposter syndrome previously, whereas there's benefits to having imposter syndrome, right? I think back to the first time, Urson, that you, Brian, and I sat down for a conversation. We're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing on this podcast? Like, I don't even know, are we supposed to be here, right, having a conversation? And um,
But I thought I was actually on with Tim Reynolds from like Dave Matthews and Tim
yeah,
Reynolds.
sorry for the letdown, dude. That's my Saturday night gig. So next
Yeah.
time I'll call Dave up and we can get start jamming. But but it's one of those things, like having some element of imposter syndrome is healthy to inspire growth and development. Um, but I'm curious to see, what do people in our profession right now either perceive about it, or moments that they've had imposter syndrome, and what do they think about recommendations for our current generation to be able to help navigate and move forward beyond that? So those are questions that I'm hoping that we have the opportunity to explore and dive into, because I think that has a lot of valuable information for our current PTs.
Wow, you just made me think of like some stories when I was a student and basically my entire first year as a PT.
What, like what? Give us something. Give us the dirty details.
Well, I just remember, I mean, when I was like my last year of PT school and also like maybe my first year graduate or so, um, I was dating someone who said, "You have an answer for everything, and you're not always right." But but I always had an answer for everything, no matter what. And I didn't necessarily, no one had ever put it to me that way. And now I can actually see it too in my 15-year-old daughter, because she's so much like me. But if I was like 100 times smarter, I always knew that someday her and I are really going to butt heads. And I can see that every time there's an argument, she has a counter argument. Um, but at the time, I guess the easiest example, and the one I always go back to, is there was I was in my last clinical, and there was a girl there who was just a little bit older than me, um, and she was referred for low back pain, and I was just going over her medical history, and she said, "Well, I also have endometriosis," and she said, "Do you even know what that is?" And I said, "Yeah," and I had no idea what it was. No idea, but I didn't want to like lose the patient's confidence. And this is like 25 years ago. So way before anything about, no one knew anything about, patient or therapeutic alliance or any of the importance of that. Because I could easily say like, oh, I just don't want to lose, I don't want to lose the patient's confidence and therefore jeopardize my therapeutic alliance. I just didn't want to look like a fool in front of my patients. But she it ended up going well, and for some reason she bought into whatever I had to tell her, and repeated motions and a little bit of manual therapy just made her back pain better. But um, she had such a strong conviction about that condition that I know if I would have said no, and probably in the way that I wouldn't have said it now. I would have been like, oh no, but let me, I'll look it up and I'll see if it is relevant to what we're going to talk about, or some sort of just genuine, transparent um, answer, that I think I would have lost her, and you know she maybe she would have never tried PT again.
I remember
So
being my first week of residency, right? So here you are, you sit past your boards, you're supposed to be a doctor, quote unquote. And my first week of residency, I got an evaluation for a high tibial osteotomy. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, what? Like, this wasn't part of our knee pain component of orthopedic class or our musculoskeletal examination. So I'm sitting there Googling what a high tibial osteotomy is. I was like, oh, they really cut that part of the bone out. That's interesting. Let me pull up a protocol while I'm at it. And I'm sitting there trying to treat this person. And I'm like, I am definitely by far not the most like intelligent person to be helping you out, but I'm going to do the best that I can. Um, and we're sitting there in a residency program and I'm trying to question whether or not I'm in the right spot, right? Like, am I supposed to be the person that's going to be trying to advance my career? And I think that's one of those things that a lot of our new graduates and our current graduates, right? Like our current PTs, everybody has those moments. And I think it's hearing those stories that, yeah, you're not alone. Everybody goes through that, which is really valuable.
I think it's one of those things that you have to have. It's knowing what you know, but also having the humility to know what you don't know, and then also being able to be willing to admit that you don't know, but you are going to work on getting and finding out that information. Whether it's you're the one that's going to be able to help them, or you will be referring to them to somebody else, who's going to help them. You can be that referral source and you can be that guide. We don't always have to be the person that is gonna find all the answers for all our patients.
I think you hit definitely a fork when you run into a situation like that. And one way is like, yeah, we're just gonna wing it. We'll see how it goes. And the other is like, I need to go talk to some people. I need to pull up some research, right? I need to ask questions. And hopefully most of us and those listening to this go down the second route. But I think that's kind of the
You
beauty.
mean not my route? Not the route I went?
I got this.
A couple prone press ups, and that's going to fix that.
Yeah. Repeated motions at the L spine. Oh, your
Right,
knee
yeah.
doesn't hurt anymore, does it?
Yeah, prone press-ups are great for endometriosis. I hear. I just read an article on that. I authored one, in fact.
Well, the nice thing is, as far as from a physical therapy standpoint, there's not a lot of things that we can't really help with. We may not actually change the condition or solve the problem per se, but movement, exercise, all these kinds of things are still going to help with most conditions, even if we're not the profession that in certain challenging situations is not the ultimate one that needs to be involved.
Mm-hmm. I think just go back to Urson's earlier question about what would we do different if we could do anything different, and this just plays off of what you said, Andrew. But just like getting the word out and advocacy and kind of getting our physical therapy, our profession, our brand out to the public. We didn't really include any individuals that are kind of solely on the advocacy front or out there kind of on the front lines trying to push our profession forward. We certainly did, just in terms of people and people that have been influential in the profession in a number of different facets, but we really kind of missed that boat. So I think as we kind of maybe look to volume 2 for this, we can hopefully include some people that are out there trying to get our brand out there and get what we do out to the public, because I think that's kind of a hurdle for us right now.
What kind of feedback have you guys gotten so far from all around the profession?
I think overall really positive. One negative comment that we did receive was our lack of variety, and I'm going to put sort of that some quotations around the lack of variety. I do think that Bryan and I had a chance to reach out to a large group of people, and we put our effort into it. We reached out probably to over 150 individuals as we were sort of searching throughout this book, and we did want to cast a relatively wide net, but at the same time, Bryan and I speak orthopedic physical therapy, right? We can have conversations in regards to pain science, and we can have conversations into manual therapy and sort of rehabilitation professionals that treat musculoskeletal pain. That was what our residency was in. And so when we were diving into the literature, who did we see? We saw Tim Flynn, John Childs, Rob Wainer, right? We were seeing these names repetitively over and over and over again. If you ask me who are the top 3 published individuals in cardiopulmonary physical therapy, I could not necessarily start throwing out names, or pediatrics or neurological stuff. And so we did probably bias a significant portion of our guests to manual therapy, neuromuscular stuff, pain science, but not necessarily neurologically based pathologies or pediatric based pathologies. And so we would like to have the opportunity to dive into some of those movers and shakers, because I think everybody has their own experiences, and we want to have this be a volume or a collection of stories that are going to be relevant for those individuals that are pursuing those kind of pathways within the profession. And so, like Bryan said, advocacy would be great, because there's individuals out there that are literally sort of pounding the pavement to try to get our profession to be moving in the direction that we need to be moving. But at the same time, I think there's individuals within their own specific niches that would have really cool stories to be able to share.
Along those same lines, have you guys looked into, looking at the way sort of our social consciousness has come to be over the past few years, with in terms of diversity, in terms of like people of color, different sexual orientation, those kinds of things, because those are big issues I think in our profession in terms of the representation in our profession, and getting some of those different voices out there, because those are also the patients that we're seeing.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a really valued point. And we had the opportunity to talk to some of the founders of National Association for Black Physical Therapists, which I think was great. Awesome conversation. They're really out there sort of moving and shaking that industry in terms of representation for students of color. And I think that's really valuable because, like you said, and I think they made a statistic, and Bryan, sort of correct me if I'm wrong, I think they said 7% of our physical therapy population of physical therapists are African American.
It was less than 10.
And
Yeah, it's definitely less than 10.
less than 10. And think about some of the populations that you're treating. I know that personally, if I was trying to seek out a medical professional, I would want to feel like I was being included from a psychosocial and from just an environmental standpoint. And I think that that's a big underrepresented population. And here at Ithaca College, we are fortunate enough to have a student organization, ICPT Students of Color, right? So they're trying to help be an outreach and show people within the community that, yes, you may be African American descent, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this profession is a boundary for you to be able to enter. And so I think reaching out and finding individuals not only within those specific niches of the profession in terms of pediatrics and neuro and cardiopulm, but also who is moving and shaking and leading the profession to be more inclusive, that'd be amazing for us to be able to try to find those people too. Mm-hmm. What's challenging is we have to find them, right? And that's where we're hoping that through these conversations that we've had, and we've mentioned it before on a couple other podcasts, if there's someone in the book that you didn't see and you got really upset about it, kick us an email, because we want to know. There's so many people out there that are changing the way we practice. We just haven't seen them. They're not in the literature. They're not in the content that we're observing and sort of digesting.
Yeah, my observation on that is, I always wonder, where are all the non-MSK PTs as influencers? Am I just not following them? Or is it mostly that, outpatient ortho enables you to post something crazy, like Instagrammable, like a crazy Bosu ball exercise that no one should be doing, versus
Right.
the stuff that everyone should be doing, like just standard traditional weightlifting.
Yeah,
No one
I
would
think
ever want to see a video of that. But are there peds influencers? Are there neuro influencers? I know we all know there are researchers, but are they as prominent, as like the Tim Flynn's? And I mean, we all know these names.
Right.
I always call these guys like the Avengers of PT, but like EIM. But is there? I'm sure there are. There must be, but we have our blinders on, right?
Yeah.
One of the cool things that we had the chance to do, I was on Lori Forner's podcast, and so it was Lori Forner, Julie Weeb, Sandy Hilton, and had the chance to, all of which are in our book, but having the chance to speak pelvic health with them and incorporate conversations about pain science and pelvic health and core population and pelvic health, that opened my eyes to a whole sort of demographic and population that are out there trying to help and treat a patient population that is typically kind of taboo and subject, right? No one wants to have conversations about MSK and pelvic floor or leakage or anything like that. And so if you dive into who's out there, there's a lot of clinicians, Urson, to answer the question, a lot of clinicians out there that are spreading the good word about what pelvic physiotherapy is all about. And so I do think that there is a subpopulation. I don't know if we've found it yet. I don't know if we're just, or at the same time, I can't even speak to cardiopulm stuff. Like all I
That's
know,
what I'm saying. Like
all I know
all
is
the other
like,
specialties, right? Because I consider that part of MSK too.
right, doing sort of tapotement on somebody's back and trying to get some phlegm to come out, right? I mean, that's like, I don't know. No one's really
Or the arm vibration,
right,
like the
right,
arm
right, right.
vibration.
I personally
My
rather watch like
cardiopulmonary professor could like vibrate her scapula so much that it would like make phlegm come out of your mouth. I don't know.
watch a grade
We just
5.
really offended. We just really offended like thousands and thousands of physios out there who do
Right.
cardiopulm too.
We'll just let them know we're trying. We haven't figured out the right people to reach out to yet, but know that is on our radar.
Our audience just went from 15 to 7. Nice.
Right. Well, there's 8 of you. You can be in the next book.
Right.
And I think you should be an influencer. If you're already not an influencer, maybe you just have like, I just don't follow you because I only follow MFK guys.
And there might be, if people listen to this, people listen to the other podcasts that you've been on, that people reach out to you and, or reach out to you with names of other people who may not be as active on social media, but are doing some good things in the profession that other people should know about. So hopefully that, just because it's not necessarily you finding them, but people reaching out to you to make you aware of them. And then you can kind of reach out to them and have those conversations.
I do know someone who I had on my story, a mentee of mine who taught cardiopulm at some like small island, like Guam or something, and then she ended up like revamping their wound care program to the point where now, like before she was there, they had something like 1,000 or more amputations a year, and now they're like down to 1 or 2 or 0 or something like that. So yeah, I mean, these are just things we never hear about. But it was like just through simple, what she considered simple, like just procedural changes. You just taught everyone appropriate wound care PT, So yeah, it was great having you guys on. And where can people find the book?
They can find the book on Amazon. So all of our, if you want to buy a book or just read more about it, it's all on Amazon. You can search Movers and Mentors on Amazon and it'll come up, or you can go to moversandmentors.com to our website. And we have some kind of snips from the book there and some more information about it. But there's also links there to Amazon as well. And we have Kindle and paperback for whichever you like to enjoy.
All right, awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. This is great.
And thanks so much for including us too. Just incredibly honored to be included in that, just especially with all the big names that you guys were able to get. It's very very humbling.
I was, yeah. I mean, it took so long for the book to be published. I was like, was this like a joke or
this thing ain't happening?
This is not going to happen.
They punked me.
That was the first person. This is the first person to be interviewed, right? So I'm like, what is this? Am I going to be part of some documentary that just like totally smears me? You know how like these people end up on these documentaries and they're like everything is totally reversed and it wasn't what it was about that they thought anyway. But yeah, when I finally saw, like, I was just paging through it by tapping on my Kindle about all the different names. I was flabbergasted, and I'm really honored to be part of it.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks for moving the profession, guys. Because in all seriousness, when Bryan and I did try to go through and we did try to vet our list, we weren't just reaching out to every Joe Schmo that has an Instagram or something like that. But that being said, you guys have influenced the profession, right? I mean, you think about Andrew started going out for the first time and knocking out your CEU courses. But you guys are, I mean, you think about the blogs that you were making, right? In terms of being some of the first individuals that are trying to share content, right? And then where has that led to the thousands of people that are digesting your material and taking your courses or trying to expand their own knowledge. So you guys have moved the profession forward, and so we're thankful to be able to include you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
People are like, "What's a blog?"
No.
It was like a podcast that you read.
Yeah,
Basically.
exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Typewriters,
All
right? Did you
Yeah,
type that on
yeah,
typewriter,
yeah.
tablet?
I did. And I used whiteout too when it was like I made a
Nice.
mistake. Yeah, it's real pain. All right. Thanks again,
All
guys.
right, see
Thank
you
you
guys.
guys.
Thanks, guys.